Back in 2004, I watched the Democratic National Convention on C-SPAN, and that was the one where Barack Obama, who still hadn't even become a senator yet, gave the keynote speech. And I remember watching it and thinking to myself, holy shit, I'm looking at our first black president. A regular customer at the 7-Eleven I was working graveyard shift at was this black lady who was a bus driver, and she'd come in and get her coffee, like, 4 out of 5 mornings I was there. And I saw her the next morning after I saw him. And I just told her, in passing, I was like, you should pay attention to this dude. He's going to be our first black president. And she was all like, oh, you're crazy. And went out the door. 4 years later, while watching the election results with my mom, I remember telling my mom about that incident and remarking that I hope that woman remembered me telling her that 4 years before that night. After Obama got into office, I ended up taking a little bit of online classes for political science. I dragged it out as long as I could on grant money, but real quickly the rules got changed that kind of forced people to have to take loans. And I had filled out the paperwork for the student loan, and I just could not bring myself to hit that final enter button because I just couldn't bring myself to cross that bridge to just immediately, bam, I'm now $10,000 in debt that I'm going to have to pay off. And that was just the beginning, just for that semester. It'd be more and more and more. And the things I had already started to learn in political science classes, which were mostly like history and some kind of like primer type stuff, were starting to kind of already make me much more cynical to the entire political process. I mean, for one thing, you don't actually need to have a degree in political science to work in politics and be any at all good at it. It's another one of those categories of college education that is just kind of filler, but doesn't lead to any kind of concrete thing. It's not going to make you a good politician. It mainly seems to be handy for understanding how polls work. So I guess if you want to be a pollster, that's great. But I don't want to be a pollster. And it did teach me that polls are tricky and they're lies. They entirely frame everything by the choices of the questions asked, and it doesn't at all really reflect how people actually think and feel. The four compass political compass test that's real popular online a couple years ago, and some people still fiddle with just to see where they've evolved and changed. I remember when I took it, and it told me all the way to the far left and just slightly on the libertarian side of the libertarian authoritarian divide. And I guess that kind of makes sense, but I remember when I was taking it that a lot of the questions were real generic stuff. And there's a lot of subjects about things that I think and feel and have strong opinions on that aren't even addressed by any of these options given. A lot of times the questions, it's I don't really technically really say that any of these 5 answers are really what I would say in response to this question, but I have to pick one of these 5 answers. So I'm going to pick the one that's closest to mine. And just the fact that everyone's going through that, it kind of shapes trend lines and kind of ease people into these categories that have already been formulated, but might not actually be the real categories of people out there. So I guess was kind of disillusioned. In 2012, I was just kind of blasé about voting. I didn't really feel threatened by the idea of Romney winning or Obama staying or going. I kind of got what I wanted out of Obama just by him being elected, because it was the psychological impact on the country I was curious about. And in some ways, without realizing that was going to be the case, Trump's kind of done the same thing, but to the other side. And what it has revealed. The last few years have been a nightmare. And I really felt like I sat out the 2016 election. Voting is important, and exercising your voice is important. But I also think that people should not vote blindly just for the sake of voting. If there's not someone who you genuinely want to see as president, then you should not be voting for someone because you really don't want to see someone else be president, because then you have to own this shitty person that you didn't even really want being your leader. Then you should only support people that you really actually want to be your leader. And just the Democrats didn't have anything to offer. Hillary, tons of baggage. Lots of things have been said about her. My core philosophical reason why I was just kind of against the idea of Hillary running is I don't like the precedent it sets about letting husband and wife teams, spouses of any combination, if you want to have a gay couple get in. The idea that you have spouse A run, hold their 8 years in office, and then as soon as they're out of office, spouse B then runs. Because like, what if like next time instead of there being a 16-year gap in between the president and the first lady then becoming president, what if next time they just do it back to back? You might think, oh, that would have been cool if like, what if Michelle Obama had run instead of Hillary Clinton, and then we could have had the Obama stay in office. And I mean, if you're a hardcore Obama follower, that might sound like a good idea, but that also means that the same cabal of interested groups that have their fingers in that administration will continue to have their fingers in the following administration of the spouse. And, like say, for instance, that drags out a full 16 years. You get 16 years of the same family administration. Well, by then, Junior will be old enough that, hey, they're post 34. They got all the great connections. This cabal wants to stay in power and keeps their fingers on the controls and the knobs and levers of civilization. So why not get Junior to run? Then hey, now we got 24 years potentially of one family in control. And all that is possible if we allow the precedent to be set that someone gets to be president just because they were married to a former president. And so regardless of the fact that Hillary's also a war hawk and yada, 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 that really, civilization's got a long way to go. And we're kind of locked in to having to keep things going the way they are to a certain degree just because of all the nuclear reactors around the planet. We can't afford civilization to fall. So whether you like it or not, this civilization that we have has to stand. And so we have to be very careful about the precedents we set that future generations have to deal with the repercussions thereof. And Trump was just white trashy. That's still always my complaint about him. It's just a television reality star, a fake rich guy, a real estate shark. Like, that's just like, I'm not against the idea of having a businessman or a hyper capitalist in charge. I just, not a television reality star, not a fucking tabloid magazine character. Why not have Bat Boy from World Weekly News be president? It's nuts. He's a salesman who sells casino hotel rooms and steak. Why on earth is he president? But at the same time, he's not Hitler. I don't even particularly view him as any more particularly racist than any human being on earth is reflexively racist, because we have eyes and language and they're therefore able to see differences in people and describe them to each other. And so we're always going to have that capacity regardless of your language or whatever. That's how seriously you take it, and whether or not you consider yourself better than others because of very superficial things like shape of eyes and shape of nose and melanin content and hair and all that other kind of stuff. These things, human beings come from a grand matrix of potential, which can allow the people born in the greatest of circumstances to have the greatest of falls, and people who are born to the most lowly and humble of origins are able to attain the greatest heights. This has happened throughout history, regardless of gender, sexuality, or race, regardless of the society. Some things are obviously more rare, but the potential for anyone to achieve greatness is only within themselves and whether or not they have greatness. So anyway, this election season, I also kind of feel like just kind of writing it off. I feel that the Democrats, by going to such lengths to distract from the cheating they did in the primary of the 2016 election and not let that be the primary story for the news cycle for the next 2 years, instead creating this big, massive fake panic about white supremacy and Trump. And constantly telling your largest ethnic demographic in the country that they're bad people and that they should vote for them because of guilt reasoning, which never works. I just really had kind of like lost hope that the Democrats would be able to get back into power, or at least on the national level. The decks just seems stacked in Trump's favor for a couple different reasons. Because what I've tried to remark after the 2016 election is what the Democrats need to do is focus like a laser on getting Wisconsin, Ohio, and Pennsylvania back. And that's it. That's what they lost, and they need to get that back. And those are the very same populations that they've been denigrating for the last 2 years. And so do you really think that they're just going to want to jump on board and want to vote for you after you've been calling them a bunch of racist, misogynistic, transphobe, pulled derogatory, negative label out of a hat and slap it on them? They're white and live out in a fucking cornfield, so fuck them. Well, you need them to vote for you, so you can only fuck them so much. Though I got out of the blue, thanks to Joe Rogan, who I'm a regular watcher of, I discovered Andrew Yang. And he's not like a perfect polished candidate. That actually works in his favor for a couple different reasons. And I was very like initially impressed with him. I still have a lot to learn about the guy. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be like dug up about him, so we can like, as obviously he himself is not going to come out and start like telling you all the negative things about Andrew Yang. He's trying to, sell himself as a positive. But I've already find myself starting to formulate my own pitch, like I did during the 4 years leading up to Obama, of trying to get people interested in him and paying attention and getting on board with that idea. I find myself starting to do that with Yang. Basically, I just focus on a couple of the planks. I'll bring up mainly the $1,000 a month thing, and calling it a dividend, and explaining it as my own version of trying to put it across to people is that, hey, we're all told that, we're living in the world's greatest empire that ever was. Certainly the world's greatest hegemony. Empire that's physical landmass. And there are larger countries. Canada on that scale, I guess, might be technically a greater empire, even though most of their land is empty. Anyway, we're one of the great powers of the world. Why don't we deserve our cut out of it? And then also I'll tell them about the whole thing. The real reason for doing it also is to get in front of the fact that they're about to phase out a shit ton of jobs within the next 11 years. They keep saying by 20 to 30, retail jobs are going to be almost entirely wiped out. Call center jobs are going to be mostly wiped out. Truck driving jobs are going to take a massive hit. And it's not really practical that all these people are going to be retrained to do other things, and they're not going to make a lot of money on Etsy selling art. So something has to be done. And so they're universal basic income, and they're just got to be sold as it not being a socialism kind of a thing. And the thing about this dude Yang is that he's an entrepreneur and isn't coming across with a lot of that intersectional, super progressive, pseudo-communist kind of talk. He's very much a businessman, and he's focusing on just the benefits of dumping that much money into every local economy across the country every month, and it not being really enough to let people just casually just quit their jobs and sit around and just live off the government check. I mean, you could, but you'd be living at such fume, coasting by bare minimum existence. You'd be miserable. So you'd at least want to have a part-time job of some sorts. It's a start. Even if he can't get it done, it's a conversation that needs to be had, because we do need to face forward to the next trauma that's coming down the road, instead of continually to constantly worrying about yesterday's problems, which is normally what we elect presidents for, is to solve yesterday's problem instead of tomorrow's problem. Finally, a guy who's actually looking at what tomorrow's problem might be. So yeah, I'm willing to get behind that. So I'll bring up that kind of stuff. I'll also bring up that he wants to legalize pot, and I'll bring up that he mentioned on Joe Rogan that he wants to mass pardon a lot of low-level drug crime offenders, mainly just anyone was busted with weed and the incident didn't involve any kind of like attempted escape or having weapons on them or any of that kind of stuff. As long as you're just in there because you're busted selling or in possession of pot, you're probably going to get a pardon. And that's something he can really easily do. Now, two of his other core planks are the Medicare for All, which that subject just seems so beaten into the ground already. It's like I don't really even feel like talking about that and bringing that up to people. The $1,000 a month thing is already kind of a little bit of a hill, I'm finding. But you really just got to think. It's not just what that money would do for you. What would $1,000 a month do for your retirement-aged parents? What is it going to do for those of you out there who have adult-aged children with disabilities who are not ever going to be able to really support themselves, and you're having to still have them live in the home? Well, if they're bringing in their $1,000 a month, you can add that to the whole total house till, and that way they're actually contributing to shit and all that other kind of stuff. The ways it can help with all sorts of little things. It's borderline bribery for votes, and there's no guarantees actually can get it done once he's in there. But it was almost done before in the 70s, a long time ago, and that old legislation might be able to be resurrected and try to be repassed, maybe just with a few modern tweaks. So we'll see on that. Legalizing pot, though, like a candidate that's just open and just balls out, I want to legalize pot, it's dumb, and also like get all these people out of prison for crimes that aren't illegal in other states. That's good. I mean, think of the amount of money that would save. And also in terms of saving money, about the whole the everyone getting the $1,000 dividend. There'd almost be no need for any other kinds of welfare then after that. Why would you need WIC or food stamps? You're getting your $1,000 a month. If you need money, use some of it for food, use some of it for fucking food. It doesn't necessarily have to be for rent, or you can. The proposal is that everyone gets $1,000 who's over 18 every month till they die, and you do with it. It's your money. It's waste it all, save it. It's up to you. It's yours. It's just to help take the edge off of everything. Now, see, here's the other thing of what I actually genuinely like about the guy is in terms of presidents having the capacity to kind of help patch up and fix America's racial divisions and tensions. I think right now would be a perfect time for an Asian man, specifically a Chinese man, because the China immigrants in America goes way back, and they have just as much a part of the grand story as the white settlers, the Native Americans, or the black slaves. They did a lot of work. And I think it kind of provides a different perspective, because he's not being antagonistic. He's not speaking in the like I said, he's not speaking in the hyper progressive left kind of double talk and political correct jargon. And one thing he said is that the fact that so much of the country is living paycheck to paycheck and has no savings and can get wiped out immediately by any kind of extra large unexpected bill and all that kind of stuff, that living under that kind of stress kind of lowers all of our IQs and makes us all more intense and tribalistic. And so just the sheer fact of giving everyone a bunch of money and making their lives a little bit easier and make them feel more calm and relaxed about themselves will make them think more clearly, become less defensive, and more open-minded to each other. So it's a smart way to fix the tension without digging deeper into the tension just by constantly ragging on and on and on about it. Which it doesn't matter how much either side of the argument is true or false. You're not going to build relationships and friendships out of that. And as I like to say, as far as any race as a group can make an apology to another group, white people have tried their best to say they're sorry about things. And glad there's a chunk of us that don't feel that way, and who cares? Like, no one group of any human beings are completely homogenous in terms of their opinions. But at some point, think of it like on the individual level. If you had done something to somebody that was bad, and you're sorry about it, and you've tried to make amends, and you've made the apology, but they just keep going on and on and on about it, and they keep ragging you for what you did, and not letting it go. At some point, you stop feeling you're sorry, and we need to avoid getting to that point. So, cash in hand for everyone, and just stop talking about this shit, and just let things go back to the slow progress of all these various human groups all merging on these continents to become some new weird American race. Because that's really what's been going on here all these centuries anyway. So anyway, those are the selling points that I got off Joe Rogan that I've been talking to other people. I personally, I like the idea of changing GDP and getting rid of it, and using different kind of biometrics to measure the success rates of companies in the country itself, and other countries too, because a lot of other countries imitate us and also care about their GDP way too damn much. But then I find myself having to try to explain what the fuck GDP is, and I'm not exactly 100% on that kind of shit either. So I tend to not go with that as a core, one of the core three things I'll bring up to people. But for curiosity's sake, I decided, how about go here to the yang2020.com and look at their policies. He's got a shit ton of policies. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to start making regular videos about all this stuff, and until we find out something terribly controversial that makes me have to disavow him. But until then, I think I can only record so long before this thing stops recording. So I'm going to read through the list of what the policies are listed on this page, and I'm going to leave a link to this page of his website in the description box below so you can look at it yourself. And I guess for those of you who are watching and might be interested in me going through this and giving my own kind of thoughts and opinions and maybe ideas on how to pitch this stuff just as regular people, he's going to have his own teams of actual politicos and wonks who are going to be doing a lot of the official groundwork. But I remember how it was during the Obama years. Regular people who want to see this happen need to be able to talk to other regular people about the candidate and what the candidate's about. For years now, when I think about the future of this country, I keep getting images of tanks around cities and lots of gunfire. Or basically we end up having some Butlerian jihad out of the Dune books where people are just rising up and smashing machines, and then a bunch of shit with tanks and people shooting at each other in the streets. We don't need to do that. As soon as I started hearing Andrew Yang's proposals, I immediately started seeing a way out of that. I can see a path forward for us that doesn't involve things completely falling the fuck apart. We need this guy to get elected. It's critical for our survival as a fucking civilization. So anyway, here are his platforms. And if you're interested in me going further into this as time goes along, leave in the description box below which one of these topics you'd like me to maybe make further videos on that I can actually dedicate more time to. Because, like I said, I don't want to have this video run on too long. But it's listen to all the things he's already got toggled down that he's got stuff for. The freedom dividend, which is the $1,000 a month. Combat climate change. Reduce mass incarceration. Wants to address the opioid crisis. He's got some stuff on LGBTQ rights. Foreign policy first principles. So he's put some thought already in how he wants to address various foreign entities. Something on gun safety. Paid family leave. Support for the arts. Control the cost of higher education. Yeah. Pathway to citizenship. In parentheses, make them earn it. Southern border security. Support the DREAM Act. right to privacy, abortion and contraception, campaign finance reform, fight for equal pay, promote vocational education, carbon fee and dividend, increase teacher salaries, early childhood education for all, legalize marijuana, make Puerto Rico a state, value added tax, hold pharmaceutical companies accountable, human centered capitalism, invest in America's health, mental health, American Journalism Fellows, a news and information ombudsman. Okay, so he wants judges, I guess, to actually be able to rubber stamp news as legit or not. That could go either way. Reduce harm to children caused by smartphones. Yeah. Every cop gets a camera. Yeah, might be about time. It's to the cops' advantage, too, really. It's hard to argue against it from either side, I would say. NCAA athletes should get paid. Yeah. Not too much. But it is unfair the way the fucking universities, like, milk money out of them and they don't get to see anything from it. Maybe, like, they could accrue the money and get paid after they graduate or something. Just spitballing here. Nuclear launch decisions. So he wants to revamp our DEFCON stuff, huh? Okay. Limit bureaucracy in the federal workforce. Bureaucracy is the bloat. Local journalism fund. I remember he was talking about this, about we need actually, that there are reasons why we need local newspapers and stuff, and we're way too much focused chasing international scandals. Provide basic banking services through the post office. I think I've heard that proposed before. They sell money orders. Why not? American Exchange Program. Prevent corruption among federal regulators. Well, that's a goal. I don't know exactly how you're supposed to specifically do that. Corruption, unfortunately, isn't a reality of any system invented by humans that humans have to be involved in. Closely monitor mental health of White House staff. I'd heard some people making a joke out of that. That's not actually a joking matter. There's a high stress, extremely important environment. And you want to make sure everyone's, tip top. There's a reason why Picard had a counselor on his bridge. Let's see, free marriage counseling for all. That's bold, but people who are big on keeping, the family unit together should be supportive of that. Automatically sunset old laws. I like that. See, my idea of big government isn't that it's about the size of the bureaucracy, because to me, the bureaucracy is just kind of dictated by kind of a combination of whatever your population size is, in conjunction with the amount of services that are being offered or demanded. So your bureaucracy is kind of dictated by those two factors. To me, what big government is in my mind is the amount of laws on the books, that we're continuously adding new laws. At some point, don't we have enough fucking laws written? So the idea of sunsetting out old laws, just like, okay, it's expired. It's been 100 years. No one's really prosecuting anyone for sodomy anymore, so let's get this off the books. Yeah, that's a good idea. Anyway, prosperity grants. Okay, I'm going to have to come back and read that on my own anyway, because that could mean anything. A grant for prosperity? Prevent airlines from removing customers. That's awful specific. Improve the American scorecard. I think that's what he wants to replace GDP with. Increase assistance for single parents, fund medical technology innovation, fund autism intervention, rebuild American infrastructure. That's vague. That's huge. That should be a third tier fucking platform right there. Reduce student loan burden, Medicare for all, expand access to medical experts, support the revival of earmarks, make it easier to save for retirement. Earmarks is in spending bill earmarks. Okay, it's weird. He's actually for that. That's bold. I mean, there's a reason why they're there. They're not they can be abused, but they shouldn't be entirely ostracized. Anyway, make it easier to save for retirement. Shit, at this point in my life, I'm not even expecting to ever be able to retire. I assume I'm going to have to be fucking working till the day I'm dead, he says, lighting a cigarette. The sweet taste of nihilism. Anyway, free financial counseling for all. Yeah. Make community college affordable for all. It is community college after all. It should be affordable. Life skills education in all high schools. Yes, that's something that they were kind of phasing out by the time I was in high school. Modernize military spending. That could mean anything. Hopefully, it means shrink it. Make it easy for Americans to move for work. That's a good idea. Implement mandatory paid leave policy. Ease the transition to self driving vehicles. Okay, well, if you're going to be doing all this other stuff to make it easier on the people for having it, I guess might as well make the transition as smooth as possible. Capital gain carried interest tax. File income taxes. Isn't that just advice to tell, like, hey, file your income taxes? Anyway, financial transaction tax. Tort reform, reasonableness dismissals. American Mall Act. Pathway to citizenship, entice high skill individuals, zoning. Oh, he wants to do stuff about commercial zoning, maybe. Algorithmic trading and fraud, nuclear energy, modernized voting, modern time banking, economic crime, media fragmentation. Oh, he wants to break up the big media conglomerates. Oh, that'd be nice. Bye, Disney. Making taxes fun, net neutrality, regulate AI and other emerging technologies. Yeah, we probably do want to start figuring out our legal framework around our artificial beings that we're making because we totally don't need slaves anymore. We just totally want to have intelligent things that we can boss around and don't have rights. And robocalling text line. Okay, I just got to know what the fuck robocalling text line is. Robocalling has become somewhere between an irritation and harassment for millions of Americans. Companies have determined that the cost of a robocall is zero, so if even a handful generate sales leads, they pay off. This has led to many of us tuning out our phones and regarding people reaching out to us with suspicion as we pick up to hear an automated voice pitching us something we don't need. Our attention is valuable, and companies that occupy it should be improving our lives. If they are simply wasting our time, there needs to be some disincentive or deterrent. As president, I will initiate a robocalling text line. If you receive a robocall that you feel is a waste of your time, simply forward the number that called you to your robocall investigations line. The SEC will follow up with the company that called you. If the SEC receives numerous complaints about a particular company, they will issue significant fines. Ah, okay, so he's going to sick the FCC on people for calling them at their house with bullshit. Okay. Well, that's just an example. Well, fine. Those are all the policy proposals on Andrew Yang's website. Like I said, I'm going to leave a link to the policies page in the description box below. Leave a comment about which one of these policies you want to delve more deeper into, and another day or so, once I get some in, we'll see. So anyway, good luck, everybody. I hope he doesn't screw up and like turn out to have like an attic full of like dried children or something. So anyway,